Hey guys, PepperAmmy here. This week we are making a Brie Stuffed Brioche. Now, brioche is a enriched bread which is normally quite hard to make without something like a stand mixer, but this recipe works well both making by hand or using a food processor rather than a stand mixer. Now I'm going to start by putting 375 grams of strong white bread flour into a bowl or a food processor if using, along with 40 grams of white sugar, 15 grams of fresh yeast or 7 grams of dry active yeast, a pinch of salt, 75 ml of milk and 3 whole eggs. Now that does sound like a lot of ingredients to keep on top of, but as always it'll all be in the description below. Now, if you are using a food processor, you want to mix this for 3 to 5 minutes until you get a smooth dough. If doing this by hand, it should take between 5 to 8 minutes. Now, as a word of advice, if you are using a food processor, do not walk away from it as the dough can wrap around the blade in the middle and make the food processor very unstable and make it jump around, so you want to have a hand on this as much as possible to keep it nice and stable. Now, you want to keep this going until you have a nice smooth dough, and once you have achieved your smooth dough, you want to add in 185 grams of softened sliced butter, a bit at a time. Then you want to keep this mixing until you have a nice soft silky dough. Once again, you can do this by hand, but it will be quite sticky and get absolutely everywhere if you are not using a food processor. Then you want to remove the dough from the bowl or the food processor and shape into a rough ball. Remember to cover and place in the fridge. Now, covering is gonna stop you getting that lovely bread skin over the top that's going to be kind of crisp and dry and icky. Then you want to place in the fridge for a few hours or overnight until the dough is nice and firm and can be easily shaped. Once chilled, place the dough on a lightly floured surface and roll the dough out. Now, as I found the hard way, this recipe could no doubt make 2 of these parcels, but at the time I didn't notice that, so here's my rough advice. If you can squeeze 2 parcels out of it, I recommend doing that instead. Then you want to roll your dough out to around about 5mm thick, and then place 250 grams round of brie in the middle of the dough. And now, personally, I had a 500 gram block of brie which I had to cut in half to form 2 discs. Now, you could optionally wrap the brie in bacon or add fried bacon bits over the top, but I personally chose to just add in some smoked paprika, some oregano and basil just to add a nice little herby touch to it. And then you want to wrap the brie with the rest of the dough, using some water if needed to stick all the dough together over the bottom of the cheese. Then you want to turn over the parcel so the rough side is on the bottom, and then egg wash the top and place in the fridge for around about an hour to firm up before baking. Once chilled, preheat your oven to 200C or 390F and then egg wash the top of the bread once again, optionally scoring the top of the dough with either the back of a knife or a lame if you have one. Optionally, you can score a pattern or you can dust over some flour using a stencil or something for that extra little touch. Then carefully transfer to a lined baking tray. I kind of feel like I should have had it on a baking tray before doing this. And then you want to bake for 15 to 20 minutes until golden on top. Now, my dough did spread out quite a bit whilst baking, and I had some uncooked dough where they were both touching as they spread out that much. So I placed the bread back in the oven until the oven had cooled down enough, just turned the oven off and left the bread in there. Now unfortunately this did lead to one of the loaves leaking where they were connected, and I just scooped up the melted cheese and put it into a side dish for dipping little nibbles and pretzels and things into. Then you want to either serve this straight away or you want to reheat for a few minutes in the oven just before serving to make sure that brie is nice and melted. Then simply slice and enjoy. Now, this would make a absolutely perfect center snack to a nibble board over Christmas, or even with some mixed meats and crackers and other cheeses for a cheese board. Now, the second loaf that I did make, because I did make two, got thoroughly enjoyed by my brother and his girlfriend, and there you have it, a great take on a baked brie for Christmas. And that wraps up this week's video. Now, as always, if you like what you saw, let me know down below with a like and a comment. If you're indeed new here, feel free to subscribe for free weekly cooking content, and I will see you all again next week. Thanks for watching.